Welcome to Franchise Focus. I'm your host, Lisa Linkowski, and I am a certified franchise consultant with Milestone Franchising. And Franchise Focus is shining a spotlight on all things in the franchise industry. And one of the things I love to do is to interview those that are franchisees. They're in the system. And in studio today, I have Chris Rahill, who is the franchisee of Mighty Dog Roofing out in the Bucks County, PA area. And Chris, welcome to Franchise Focus.
Thank you for having me.
No, great to have you finally, right? We've had some stops and starts because you've been really busy and life takes on, and that's business ownership, right? So Chris, tell us about who you are and what you were doing before you became the owner of Mighty Dog.
Yeah, so, like you said, my name's Chris Rahill. I am from Bucks County. I grew up in Chalfont. Lived there my whole life until I went to college. I actually went to college in Georgia, but then once I graduated, I came back to Bucks County. Started working in finance and then found myself looking for a job about 3 years ago, and I ended up starting to work at Benetrends Financial, which anyone who knows about franchising probably has heard of Benetrends. So I was a funding consultant there at Benetrends, and so I think that was a great job for me because I always knew I wanted to own my own business. I just didn't really know what that was going to be, and I knew nothing about franchising. So starting at Benetrends, I took that job because it was a sales role, and that's what I was looking for. But I didn't really know what type of sales it was going to end up being, and so I ended up learning a ton there and really getting immersed into the world of franchising. I had a lot of good relationships there, met a lot of great people, and while I was working there was when I bought my first franchise with my brother. And so we were doing that. I was still working at Benetrends. We had bought that business, and so I was kind of doing both. And I just quickly, fell in love with running that business, and then decided, that I wanted to do something like that full time. So toward the end of 2020 was when I started to think, okay, I think I want to leave here and I want to run my own business full time now. And I was trying to figure out what that was going to be. And then, kind of led me down the path of where I am now with Mighty Dog.
Right. And why Mighty Dog? Out of all of the, you know from working with Benetrends, I mean, there's 4,000 franchises out there. So how the heck did you narrow it down? And by the way, did you do that on your own? You didn't use a consultant there, Chris?
I didn't use a consultant. I talked to a few just because, consultants were my partners.
Right, they're your partners, so you know a lot.
Right, so it was almost hard, who do I even work with?
Right.
I know so many, and I like so many of them. But I think Mighty Dog for a few reasons. I knew Josh Skolnick and Zach Butler personally because they're local guys in Bucks County and with Monster Tree. So I was a funding partner for Monster Tree when I was working at Benetrends. So I got to know those guys really well. And then I was a funding partner for Redbox Plus, when they went to Franchise Fastlane. And so, I knew them on a personal level, which, meant something to me. Absolutely. So I knew that they were in the process of launching something with Mighty Dog Roofing, and I had talked to Josh, and he said, hey, I'm starting a company, Horsepower Brands. We're going to be launching home service companies the next several years through this. And so I was like, all right, well, I'm interested. Let me know when that process kind of starts for you. So that was definitely a piece of it. I knew I wanted to be in home services, so that was I definitely wanted to go that way. And then I also wanted something that was more of a higher ticket home service item. The business I was running with my brother was a seal coating, line striping, asphalt repair business. It's a good business, but it's more of a volume game. It's similar to landscaping in that way. Right. So you're kind of running around crazy, and it's a lot of calls, high a lot volume. Of estimates, right? Very high volume. I wanted something a little bit different where I was working on bigger, more exciting projects for homeowners. And so, roofing kind of fit that as well. So I think a combination of those things kind of led me down that road. And I looked at a few different businesses from, obviously roofing, painting, flooring, some outdoor lighting stuff all in that home service space. And I think at the end of the day, I just really liked the system that Mighty Dog was building and, what their mission was with Horsepower Brands and where they wanted to take the brand. Right. I also liked that it was new. That was exciting to me. I think some people may get maybe scared of hey, it's brand new, nothing's really proven. I kind of looked at it in a different way. I thought, this is exciting. I can be kind of part of that group that helps shape the brand and stuff like that. So that was good. And then again, just knowing Josh and Zach was important. And so, knowing their values and the type of people they were and their goals for where they wanted to take the business, I think at the end of the day was one of the bigger factors.
And what number franchisee were you?
So I'm 6.
You're 6.
But I think I was the 3rd one to open up. So, in the beginning there were 5 of us that all went to the first academy together, and we were all starting at the same time. So I'm still very close with those guys.
Oh yeah.
We talk regularly, but
sure.
But yeah, I mean, I was part of that first handful of guys who were opening at the
right, and they call that the
21.
first 10. They call that core 10,
yeah,
because it's a make or break with those first 10 people, right? And you really want to get, and it is that chicken and egg scenario too of, well, who's going to be first? Who's going to be first for this concept? We don't know anything. We don't know if it's going to go well. And so you are 6, you open 3rd, right? So you open up before the other people, and then you all get to help each other.
Right.
That's the beauty of franchising, that you can sit there and all help one another and go, well, how did you deal with this? Or, I've got this situation, and you run into that. And that's the beauty. If you were trying to create a roofing company on your own, who are you going to go talk to?
Right.
You can't go ask another roofing company. You're going to go, figure it out, buddy. Good luck to you.
Right. Yeah.
So you have 0 experience in roofing. You are going and doing the actual roofing yourself, Chris, or are you having your people go and do this for you?
No, so I have crews for a lot of different stuff. I mean, I'm almost 2 years in now, so I'm doing a lot of different stuff now, a lot more than just roofing, which is exciting. And something that I didn't even know up front that if you told me where I'd be where I am now 2 years ago, I would have probably told you, I don't think I'll be doing all that kind of stuff. Because the industry is just so big of exterior construction. There's just so much opportunity. But no, I have crews for all different types of work, from roofing, siding, gutters, windows. We're doing some deck work now, and just some other, I'm working for a couple custom builders, so we're doing some specialty work on that end. So, depending on what the work is, I have different crews for different things. My guys have taught me a lot about the business, so now I am able to do some small stuff on my own, so smaller repair stuff. If I can't get a crew out there, or a couple guys out there, I can go out and I will do some small stuff on my own, but as far as replacing roofs or siding, or I have crews for all that type of stuff. Yeah,
and that's the important part about all of this, is that this is an executive model business where you're the conductor. You've got your crew of what it is that they're supposed to be doing, and they go out and they do it, and you are managing them to, so that you can go and get more business, because that's your job, is to go seek out and go do the business development so that you have more jobs coming in. What a failure is when a franchisee starts trying to do all the work, and then their business comes to a halt because they're not out there getting new business. And that's not the way it's supposed to work for this type of franchise. There are other franchises where you're that owner-operator, you're in it and you're doing it, but not this one. This is really meant for you to have your crew and have your team. So that's good. I have a great quote from when we had our initial discussion, and you said, franchising is so huge but so small at the same time. I love that. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. I think, kind of to your point earlier about, just having relationships with the other franchisees, you kind of feel like it really is a partnership for you. Now it might be over 100 franchisees in the Mighty Dog system. Right. So, there's a couple who are now in Pennsylvania. There's a couple guys in Jersey now. So, there's people close to me now. So, it does feel like really like a family with Mighty Dog. But yeah, in terms of franchising being so small, I think when you don't know much about it, it feels like it's like this huge thing. But the franchise community is very tight knit. There's not that many companies in the back end services when it comes to financing and all those other little parts. A lot of those companies, if you're in the franchising world, you know who these companies are, and you know the people. So that's important, because like anything else, it's all about the relationships you build. So that's been great for me, because coming from Benetrends, there's a lot of people now who have a part in my business who are people that I met when I was working at Benetrends, and like different partners and vendors. Like you have access to different vendors who are people I used to refer business to when I was at Benetrends, and now they're helping me with my business, whether it's, you know, like we were talking about before, whether it's direct mail or
Yep.
the reviews or whatever. Like these are companies that I used to refer my clients to at Benetrends, and now it's like, hey, like I'm an owner now, and to be able to have that relationship has been really helpful for me, especially early on in the business when you're kind of running around trying to figure everything out at the same time. To have relationships like that.
And it's such a small world that my last guest previous to this one was Nice Job, Reputation Marketing.
Yep.
And it turns out that you work with them because I even had mentioned Horsepower Brands. I know that Mighty Dog is part of Horsepower Brands, and yet you were the one that brought them into Horsepower Brands, right?
Yeah.
So for those that don't know what we're talking about, those reviews that are critical, those reviews that, again, can make or break a business, literally.
Yeah.
Or lack of asking for reviews, and now there's nothing out there, and the customer is like, is this company for real? You know, are they just getting started? Like, what's going on? This is a great way for service, specifically service-based businesses, to get reviews and have that on all of your website and your social media, and they do a great job with it. And Nice Job does all of the reputation marketing for your parent company, which is Horsepower Brands, and that is a small world. So yes, as small as it gets, and it's funny because you do think you're like it's just infinitesimal out there, but in reality, it's, you know, it's like the Dr. Seuss, I forget which one, the Horton Hears a Who, I think it is, where it's just this little tiny, you know, speck on this, you know, flower base there. So. Okay, you mentioned that you've got many other areas that you're working in. So the name is Mighty Dog Roofing, but it's all exterior work. Did you know that up front, or they kind of mentioned it to you and you were so overwhelmed that you're like, I'll never even get to any of that. I'm just going to be in the roofing space. Like, how did that work?
Yeah, so I think early on, because I was part of that first group, you know, while I'm going through that learning curve of starting a new business in a industry that I'm not very familiar with, Mighty Dog Roofing was also new to this, right? We were the first group of franchisees. We're the first group that they're training. So, and they were very transparent about that. Like, hey guys, like we're learning at the same time you guys are in some of these things. So I think, you know, the focus in the beginning was, let's figure out the roofing. Like let's make, because that's the bread and butter of the business. Right. So like, let's figure that out. Like, let's make sure we have the partnership set up for that, and that you guys can get off the ground and feel confident and comfortable with like the main piece of this business, which is the roofing. But it was always, you know, laid out to be a business where you can do a lot of different things, because I quickly realized, you know, when you're going out to give someone an estimate for a new roof, they're probably going to ask you, well, do you do gutters too? How about windows? I need 5 windows replaced. Or, hey, we're looking to do the roof and the siding, right? So early on, I think I turned down some business because I was just afraid, because I didn't know that piece of the business yet. And so I quickly realized I need to learn every piece of this business. Now, I still don't know every piece of the business, right? I'm continually learning every day and every new job and customer that I have, but I kind of took it one step at a time. You know, doing the roofing, feeling comfortable with that, and then, you know, starting to do more gutter work and feeling comfortable with that. And then, you know, last year, about midway through the year last year, I started doing a lot of siding work and some windows, and now we're kind of really becoming a one-stop shop for people, which is great. And I think that helps you, that has helped me get a lot of business, especially some bigger jobs where I'm going out and saying, hey, we can handle every issue you have or everything that you need, we can handle it. Right. Whereas another contractor may go out and say, like, okay, I can do the roof and the gutters, but you got to call someone else for the windows or the siding or whatever it is. And so I think, you know, putting yourself in the homeowner's shoes, I think customers and homeowners, they want to work with one person. If they like you and they trust you, especially, they want to work with you. And especially if, you know, they don't want to have 3 different people at the house, 3 different contracts, 3 different people to pay. So that's helped me get some big work and close some big jobs, is because we're able to do every piece of the job for them. Right. And so, you know, that's been great. And now Mighty Dog has really put a lot of investment and time into creating partnerships for us on all those different aspects of the business.
Nice.
Whereas in the beginning it was like, hey, let's focus on the roofing. Now it's like they're realizing, just like we all are, like this business is huge and there's a lot of opportunity. And so, you know, they're constantly working on new partnerships for us as the franchisees, which is obviously helpful.
Excellent. Well,
Yeah.
listen, we have so much more to talk about,
Yeah.
Chris. We're going to take a quick break and we're going to hear a word from our sponsor, Zoom One Media. So stay tuned.
A Wawa Club? Is it the crispy bacon on the turkey BLT? The endless layers of flavor of the buffalo chicken salad? Or is it a secret handshake? Nah. At Wawa, there's a club for everyone. Find yours today.
We ride for those who died. The Police Unity Tour and RVN Television is bringing to you a show called On Your Honor, Straight Talk. And I'm your host, Patrick Monturi. I am a retired police chief from Florham Park, New Jersey, and I am also retired from the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial in Washington, D.C. I am currently, for the last 27 years, the CEO and founder of the Police Unity Tour. And this show will bring to you straight talk about law enforcement, the actions and heroism that is provided to you, the citizens of the United States, as well as their actions in falling in the line of duty, as we could see some of the stories that surround that. Again, please watch us on RVN Television and be safe. Take care.
At Jersey Mike's, they slice your order fresh right in front of you. And let me tell you, watching that can send a rush of emotions through a person. Excitement, impatience, baby-like wonder, indecisive, anticipatory chewing, nervous pacing, happy claps, and finally, jealousy, because that's this guy's sub. I should order one. Good idea. Sliced right in front of you. It's a Jersey Mike's thing. A sub above.
And welcome back to Franchise Focus. I'm your host, Lisa Lankowski, and I have in studio Chris Rahill, who is the franchisee owner of Mighty Dog Roofing over in the Bucks County, PA area. And Chris, you were really, you were so impressive to me when we met and we had our pre-interview. And you know, you're young, like you're a young guy, and you're just taking this and you are just running with it, which I applaud you all the way. One of the things that really stuck out to me when we had first spoken was your story about your first sale. And I asked you, I'm like, do you remember what your first sale was and what was that like? And you had a great story.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, so, you know, it's coming up on 2 years now since I started the business. I launched the business on June 1st of 2021. So June 1st, I launched the business. June 15th, I'll never forget it. June 15th, I was going out for a couple weeks doing some estimates, you know, just getting started, talking to customers and giving quotes and stuff like that. And on June 15th, I got a call from this woman named Jenny, who ended up being the first job I did. And she called me and said, hey, like, I really like your quote. I want to move forward with the job. And I'm ecstatic over the phone. And I say, all right, great, I'll send over the contract, everything. So we get it signed. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, I need to do a roof job now, and I'd never done this. And so, you know, pretty nerve-wracking. So on that next day, I went in and sat at SRS Distribution, which is my supplier in Hatboro, and I sat down with my rep there, and I was like, hey, like I need to do my first roof job in like 3 days, and like I don't even know where to begin. I didn't know how to put an order in. To buy material. I didn't have a crew yet who was like signed on to work for me, and I didn't know what to do. So I sat down there, and he was like, I'm freaking out. He says, listen, don't worry about it. He does this every day. He's been doing it for 30 years. So he's like, listen, it's okay. Like, we're gonna figure it out. So we sat there. While we were sitting there, kind of going through the material order to get that all set up and delivered, a guy walked in who is a subcontractor, a roofing subcontractor that Alex, my rep, had been working with for a long time. So while we're sitting there putting the order in, this guy walks in, and Alex is like, oh, Matt, by the way, like, I want you to meet Chris. He just started his company. He needs a subcontractor, and actually he's got a job in 3 days. Like, can you do the job? And this guy just goes, yeah, that's no problem. We can do the job. So I'm like, okay, so we're putting the order in. We're good there. I'm like, hey, Matt, how you doing? I'm Chris. So now I have my crew. And we sit there, and like it all happens within like 30 minutes. We call the dumpster company, and we get that scheduled. So that's now being scheduled. Wasn't even thinking like, oh, I need a dumpster. So, we do all this in like 30 minutes, and all of a sudden I'm like, all right, and we did the job that Thursday, and it went great. What the funniest part is, every job, always something small may go wrong. Sure. But like on this first job, like nothing went wrong. And it's funny because I'll look back now and I'm like, how did nothing go wrong on that one? But now it's like I'm 2 years in and like I got a job today and like 3 things go wrong. I guess it was like something about like God looking over me that day, like, hey, this is the first one.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just,
it all just came together.
It all just came together for me. And it's, to me, like what that showed me and like taught me in that moment was like, you'll always figure it out. And so that's just the mindset I've kind of always had, and especially now with this business is, there's points where you're going to be confused, you're going to be scared, you're not going to know like what to do, you might be nervous, but like you'll figure it out. And so I always kind of go back to that moment where I was sitting there and I knew, nothing about how to get this job done, and we got the job done. It went as smooth as could be, and I had a super happy customer, and she probably had no clue.
No.
That she was my first customer. And at some point, I'm gonna go see Jenny and tell her like, hey, like, by the way, you were my first job. Yeah. But like a lot of times I think a lot of the things that we're stressed about in our own heads, like it's just in our own heads. Right. And so, yeah, I mean that, and then from there I was going. And like I was past that first one was behind me. And I was just excited. And I remember picking up the first check like for that job and just being like, wow, like I'm doing this. Like I did my first job. For real. And so, I mean, it was a great way for me to start,
That is just terrific. Yeah. And that leads to another really great question that, there is learning curves. Like there's a couple reasons why people fail in franchising. Being undercapitalized, number one. Number two is, thinking that this is going to be easy. Yeah. There's nothing easy about this. This is still business ownership. Yeah. So Chris, what's been your biggest learning curve that got thrown at you? Jenny was not. I mean, Jenny, it all just kind of came together. But what's been your biggest learning curve that you really had to take a stumble back and go, woof, I gotta get this together now?
Yeah, so I mean, probably the biggest thing in the beginning was just learning the industry of roofing, because I had experience running a business a little bit, right?
With your other.
Yeah, and I had experience in sales. So like those parts, the sales piece of the business and like the customers, like talking to the customers, like I was comfortable with that. That's what I had been doing for my working career up to that point. It was like the industry knowledge that I was nervous about. But I knew that would come. I knew with time and experience, like that would come to me. So like initially, that was probably the biggest learning curve, was just learning the industry. But just in general of running a business, I think the biggest thing is just keeping a level head, I think is really important, because there's going to be highs, and the highs can be really high and the lows can be really low. And, I think that's something I learned from my dad early on, and because my dad's been in sales forever, and he always told me, like, never get too high, never get too low, like try to keep a level head. And it's hard to do that in business, because it's one thing when you're working for a company and you're working for somebody else and you have that salary and everything like that, and you're kind of safe in a way. But when you're in a business, and especially when you first start, those lows can sting, because you start to question, like, what am I doing? Like, should I really be doing this? Am I cut out for this? And so I think for me, just keeping a level head about everything and having that mindset of like, all right, I'll figure this out. Like, everything is not going to go perfectly all the time, especially in the beginning. I think was hard for me in the beginning to comprehend a little bit. But as you start to go through and you deal with different obstacles and problems and challenges in the business, like you can almost cross that off the list. Like you make a mistake, okay, you're going to learn from that mistake, and now try not to make that mistake again. So now that mistake, all right, we've kind of conquered that piece of it. And then every week, every day, you're going to have other things that are going to come up, and just to me, it was always just about making sure that when I made mistakes, one, I didn't let it get me too down, and two, like I really took a step back and looked at that mistake and said, like, how can I make sure this doesn't happen again? And if I was able to do that, then I was like, I'm going to be able to look back and not regret this situation, because it was a huge learning experience for me. So that was, that was hard for me, and that was probably one of the bigger learning curves of just business ownership in general for me.
Excellent.
When I first started.
That's good. No, the
Yeah.
audience, listen, everyone's got to hear that there's different challenges that everyone faces, and how do they come to it, and to be mindful
Yeah.
of that. And so you might have touched on something that someone else is dealing with right now and grappling with out there. But it is difficult. It is business ownership, and those highs are high and those lows are
Yeah.
low, right? But at the end of the day, it's business ownership, which overall is an exhilarating thrill. And I know you're never going back. Like, that's it. Like, this is it. So you mentioned that your brother owns a business. Do you want to give a shout out to who your brother is and what the business is?
Yeah, so my brother Jerry, he's my older brother, he's 3 years older than me. He owns the Patch Boys, which is also a franchise. And he's owned that for, he might be around 5 years now in that business. So he was probably 2 or 3 years into that business when I started this. And
what area does he cover?
He owns a lot of territory there. He owns Bucks, Montgomery, Chester, Delaware, and he owns a little bit in Jersey too. He owns a lot of territory with Patch Boys.
So Chris and Jerry
Yeah.
killing it, and Jerry, right?
Jerry, yes.
Jerry killing it in the franchise space.
Yeah.
And listen, this was a great discussion. I thank you so much for coming in and sharing your experience with us and being able to talk all about Mighty Dog Roofing. You want to reach out for all things exterior building. Of course, roofing is first, and then everything else is secondary. Please, we're going to put up Chris's contact information so that you can find him and give him a buzz. And in the meantime, this is Franchise Focus. Franchise Focus airs every Friday at 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And I represent Mighty Dog Roofing as one of the 500 franchise concepts that I represent. And you can learn more about me at milestonefranchising.com. Thank you so much for tuning in.